Hello guys and welcome to my budget deck channel. Today with another updated profile of Domain Monarchs since Ether came back to 2. And I know some people will already be turned off by that profile because they see cards where like, why is this card not at 3 in this deck? Why is this card even in the deck? If you let me explain it, you can still be mad in the comments, but at least hear me out. At least let me talk about why I chose what card and what ratio. And we might get to consensus, we might not, but I feel like I actually tried to make this deck. I tried to use a special philosophy for this deck, and that is don't brick with this, because I love playing Monarchs, but since Pantheism is not going to come back anytime soon, I feel, I mean, maybe next Banlist, but yeah, so far it's not. So I tried to make this deck playable in a sense of I really don't want to sit at a table, be like, okay, I'm just going to lay those cards down, I can't do anything, and do that about, let's say, 3 out of 10 times. Even if it's 2 out of 10 times, it's already nasty. But with Monarchs, it has been a problem since Pantheism is out of the game. And even before that, if you didn't draw the right starting cards, yeah, you know what it was. So let's jump right into it, because there's already the first thing people might be saying like, oh, what is that? And that is there's only double Erebus in this deck, because that has multiple reasons. Since before you always had to play 3 since Ether was a 1 or a 2, but now that Ether fills up the slots, Erebus is first of all searchable, and if you want to summon stuff, then you mainly want to go for Ether, because Ether gives you basically the same kind of setup as Erebus does. Sure, if you go first, you can reduce your opponent's hand size by 1, but if you actually try to lock them out of doing anything, is that really going to matter so much if they have 1 card more or not? It's mainly better if you actually get the setup, and with Ether you can search Ether and you can disrupt them during your opponent's turn, get the same graveyard set up. So I feel like this card is a little bit better, but this deck doesn't focus too much on the Mega Monarchs in a sense. Like, it doesn't actually want to be having 2 tributable monsters on the field, because that can be a problem. I'll talk about that. You see already with the ratio of Edias in this deck, some people might not be super happy with it. Those cards are mainly going to be summoned if Edea goes through, or you use the field spell to summon them. That's why I tried to keep them as low in the count of monsters as low as possible, where you actually need 2 tributes, and try to focus more on the don't let your opponent play the game too much. I mean, this deck still is fair enough, because I feel like you give your opponent, especially with the side deck being a thing, a lot of possible outs for your board, since it's not super protective and super hard to pull off actually, so it's not going to kill them super much. Vanity's Fiend, obviously, card Fiend Lock has been around since a very long time, and I feel like if anywhere, then obviously do it in Monarchs. Locking your opponent out of special summoning. If you can't get the field spell on board, for example, then this card can shut down a few decks as well. Cards like Sky Strikers, however, like any of their spell cards, basically totally craps on this deck, so in total you have to do probably a few things about that. But other than that, it can shut down quite a lot of decks. Another card that can do that, which you can play with the ratios if you want to. I feel like this card at 3 and this card at 2 would work the exact same way, because with that being tribute summoned, you still lock your opponent out of the extra, and they can't activate monster effects, which completely shuts down stuff like I think Marin says and Salamangreat and all those kind of decks. Plus, one good thing about Majesty's Fiend is it kind of is annoying sometimes, but the good thing about it is you have the Monarch stats on this card, so it works with the tenacity as well, so you can search, so you might want to switch the ratios. But I felt like Vanity's Fiend in the end still is a little bit stronger, because that yeah, it shuts down monster effects, but if there's some kind of way how they can get 2 or 3 monsters on board, then they can technically get into a link monster that can beat over it, and well, from that point onwards you're just doomed. So I feel like Vanity's Fiend is a little bit stronger, but it's comparable how devastating it can be for most decks. Double Kuras for popping staff, Kuras for being a possible disruption during your opponent's turn. You have to really watch out with chains though, because some of the cards are worded a little bit awkward, especially if you use it with the Ether thing, so the effect still goes through this. There's a lot of weird stuff where you have to actually watch with that kind of thing, how the chains work, and that you don't miss timing in certain things, because that's a when effect, and we all don't like those. So watch out with that. Plus, this card gives you, it's a very stupid disruption, because your opponent just draws another card, and these days it's deadly. Back in the days, might not have been, but nowadays that is not as strong anymore. But there's a good interaction with Return of the Monarchs and Curse the Light Monarch, where you can pass off of that one. You can get cards from your field and basically swap them out with other cards, stuff like Pot of Desires, if you feel like you don't really want to use that anymore. or get rid of any other kind of stuff, like you trap card, for example, like the Prime Monarch, want to get that into the graveyard and draw a card off of that. That also works. Another card where people will probably be like, what is this card doing in the deck? And I kind of agree to a certain point, but what you have to think about is, what does that deck want to do? That deck wants to shut down your opponent with the domain lock, so your opponent can't go into the extra deck, with stuff like the Monarchs Erupt, so your opponent can't activate effects anymore. And what's the big weakness of this deck? Like, the massive weakness of this deck is bricking, and that is the fact because you don't draw a monster either that is tribute fodder, or you don't draw a monster that can be tribute summoned. This card is both in one, because you only have to control no monsters, not your opponent has to control one, so it's a little bit better than some other cards. You could play Red Layer, but this card at least has the spell trap card removal effect as well, which I kind of like about this card. Plus, this card is a level 5 monster, so you could tribute summon it, and since none of these things have to be a Monarch monster for the effects, you just have to control a tribute summoned monster. This card actually does both, so when you draw this card, it's most likely not going to be a brick, because it can be used for each of the certain things. So that's why I really like this card in this deck, and I hope you understand kind of why I really run this card in the deck. And to be fair, you could possibly put a Vanity's Fiend out, but I felt like Vanity's Fiend is way too strong to bump up Link Slayer to 3. But the principle behind this card makes the deck a lot more playable, because you barely see this card being completely useless. And if this card is completely useless to you, then probably no other card will get you out of your misery as well. Mithra, basically, so you can tribute summon another monster if you want to use Kuraz, and then tribute summon another monster over it or something. You don't have to use it. It's very neat in the side deck. That's why I definitely would run it, at least in the side deck, because if you go in second against Sky Strikers, then that can really screw up your opponent. If you're going first, it's okay-ish against Sky Strikers, because they can use the full chain of their Link monsters, because they have to watch that after they use Kagari and those kind of things, that you get rid of the monsters, so you can't then go into Shizuku at the end phase, or maybe not Hayate if you want to do all the engage combo in between, but they can still link your token away. They can just not go into a Sky Striker monster after, because they're all link 1, so it screws a little bit with them, but it doesn't screw with them enough to actually help. But go in second, you turn off their spell trap cards, or spell cards off. I mean, Widow Anchor is only at 1, so I guess there's not that much left, and they'll probably play a few more Floodgates. But what do I know? Another card that really is valuable, since you play a lot of level 5 and 6 monsters in the deck, Eidos, well, that's at least can't be ashed, so I feel like that gives you that sort of protection. That's why I only run Edia at 2, because the problem with Edia is, if this card gets hand trap, back in the days wasn't as much of a problem. What hand trap was there around when the Prime of Monarchs? Effect Veiler at most, and that was kind of it. But now this card is basically done, like completely done. If any hand trap, the Ash Blossom is killing this card, Fake Veiler is killing this card, Infinite Impermanence is killing this card. So there's already 3 contenders that a lot of people would be playing. So you do not want to be relying on the effect of this card going off. So I feel like rather want to play one more 1-for-1. So even if the effect doesn't go off, you still have a normal summon and you could still tribute over it, rather than being like, oh, I normal summon this card and what now? Because you have enough monsters, and barely you'll start with a hand where you need exactly your 2 monsters, or like you have 1 monster and you need that and you can't discard that. So I feel like 1-for-1 mainly is the better card in that kind of regard. You could play stuff like Glow Up, also like the you know, the little plant thing if you want to, but that card is completely useless once you draw it. So I feel like relying on that and only having 1-for-1, we're not the OCG. This card is not as good then. Pantheon, obviously, I don't think for you Monarch players I have to tell you much about this card. This card is insane. If you would have that at 3, they could, even then I think Monarchs wouldn't do much, but they could at least. They at least had the potential right now. It's kind of hard one. Tenacity, well, searching any kind of card that you need. Mainly going to search either Pantheism or the Domain. Sometimes Monarchs Erupt, or even if you happen to have all of your puzzle pieces, March of the Monarchs can be super good against Sky Striker, for example, because your opponent can't target you. Triple Paw of Desire, I think you don't really see much in Monarchs, I feel like. I don't know if people have come around more, but my philosophy with this kind of card is, if you draw this card, and even if you banish important pieces of your deck, at least it gives you the chance to play, because if otherwise your hand is dead, then yeah, you don't do much anyway. And I think that's the only really draw card that you can use if you don't want to run Power of Extravagance and have an extra deck and make those kind of things, that actually can help you plus and actually get you to cards that you might need. Plus, if you really don't want to use it, if you want to bump it down to 2 or whatever, you can still pop it with Kuraz. So all in all, I don't think the card is as bad in the deck as you would think at first. Especially playtesting, it has gotten me out of some tricky situations, has caused a handful of tricky situations for me as well, but they were already kind of tricky to begin with before I even resolved Path of Desires. Foolish Burial Goods, I think it's a nice play start. You can play the normal Foolish Burial if you want to. I feel like this card gets you started. This card can get you to your domain quickly. You don't have to run terraforming because this card gives you other options. You mainly want to send Pantheism. You could send Prime Monarch, for example. There's those kind of things, but I will accept if you don't play this card. I just like it as a starter to get into your domain lock. Other than that, swap it out with whatever you want. March of the Monarchs for protection. I like this card more than other cards because it actually helps you blocking some of your opponent's shenanigans, especially because targeting effects are way more than back in the days. These days it's quite hard for people to get rid of your things with not targeting or destroying you, because people don't it's not the boss monster meta anymore where you just have one beefy boy and they're not going to get rid of by targeting effects. So targeting effects are still pretty good, so that kind of blocks that. A card where I'm not sure if I like it or not, Return of the Monarchs. Yes, it gives you plus, especially with the Kuras thing, helps you quite a lot. But other than that, it's a win more card in a sense. Yes, you set up your next turns, but it doesn't help you supporting your first turn. And I like playing cards that help you support your first turn, but I feel like it's still a good card in a sense. You could put it down, you could not play it. I tried to not play it as well, didn't go that bad, but you kind of need a number of Monarch spell traps, especially for stuff like Pantheism. And if you don't have that, and there's not that many good ones, you could actually play the trap that protects, which I didn't feel like was too bad as well. But in the end, Return of the Monarchs can help you, and if your opponent doesn't deem it necessary to get rid of this, or decides to get rid of the main possibly, or the other Floodgate cards, then this card lasts a little bit longer, and you can actually profit from it multiple times. Domain, well, don't have to say much to that. No extra deck, no fun for your opponent, so trying to keep it fair so nobody uses the extra deck. Yeah, and also it gives you access to your Monarchs, plus makes them in your turn sad. If I would be doing both turns with the attack boost in the battle phase would be nicer, but I guess 800 would be a little bit much then. Monarchs Erupt, obviously a good card, but it's all cards that kind of stop you from actually doing much as well. But if your opponent can't play anything and you just tickle them every turn with 2 monsters or 1 monster, then that card is pretty fine. Prime Monarch giving you prime target for tributes. And without the extra deck, that's basically all it does. Getting your cards banished that you might be able to recycle with Edia. Yeah, that's about what you're going to do with this. For the side deck, I thought about what's meta, what could you do, and you already noticed in the main deck there is no Monarch Stormforth, and that is the reason why. Some people will also be like, what, no Stormforth? A lot of people I've seen play 3 Stormforth, but why would you do that? If you try to go first, if you go in second, fair play, you can side them in, that's why in the side deck. But if you go first, what do you want to do with them? You want to set them so you can use Ether during your opponent's turn and disrupt them and like tribute one of the monsters. So what you need for that is you have to have an Ether in your hand for that to work out. You have to have your setup that you actually can use this for, and I felt like this was way too situational in a sense for that being the only use of this card, because your opponent doesn't have any monsters obviously when you start your turn. So I felt like side deck card very good, main deck card actually bricked in my hand way more often than I would want it to play. Nibiru obviously against stuff like any kind of Dragon Link these days, any combo decks if you go in second, because then you already have Tribute Forger on your field, you get rid of your opponent's field, you shut down their plays, so that can be quite nice. One Dark Simorg against trap decks because it's summonable off of Ether, so that's pretty nice. I like to run this card one just because of that reason. One more Majesty's Feet if you try to swap out the ratios a little bit. Triple Land Rope actually for like Thunder Dragons and those kind of decks, because you can flip them face down and then get around their gimmicks a little bit more. Not optimal, it's go for going second because going first isn't that nice, but obviously if you go into side decking with Thunder Dragons and you manage to win round 1, then they'll probably make you go second as Monarchs, and as Thunder Dragons try to go first, so this card can be handy, but you can swap it out. Mithra for the Sky Striker matchup, already talked about this can be handy, plus it's neat, I think. Frost Blast if trap matchups as well, if your Link Slayer isn't enough and you need a searchable trap removal, which let's be honest, it's not that great in a sense, because if your opponent has floodgates and trap cards but still lets you summon a monster, tribute monster with 2400 attack and whatever, then you probably don't need this card anymore as well. They'll probably disrupt you before you get to use this effect of the card. So not sure how good the card actually is in a sense, but you can send it to the graveyard, so that's pretty good. I like that. That's why Foolish Burial Goods comes in handy too, plus the effect of Ether and so on can be quite neat in that regard. Monarchs Stormforth, already talked about this. Very neat going second, non-targeting, non-destruction removal. Grade can be negated obviously, but yeah, you can swap some hand traps in for this card as well if you want to. And one more Monarch Erupt. This can be anything evenly matched, but this is the budget deck channel, so I try to keep the deck a little bit cheap. But if you want to run evenly matched and all those kind of things, do it. That's up to you. I hope you enjoyed the deck profile. Hope you can understand a bit of my deck choices. It might not be conventional, but I think it worked out the best for me that way. That you obviously can tune a lot, because I feel like Monarchs are a deck that's quite linear, but you can do a lot with them. I feel like it barely ever changes the deck much, and raises the ceiling up higher than it actually is, because in the end you will mainly do the same kind of thing. But yeah, subscribe to my channel if you like budget content, if you like Monarch content. I'm really happy about them at the moment, so I might upload a few more, maybe Clifford Monarchs. I'm working on that, so stay tuned for this. Give it a like, and I hope you have a good day.